Okay everybody, in today's video we are going to do some pressure canning. We are going to can up some hamburger meat and some bacon. I'm going to show you how to do both of these. What you're going to need, of course, is your clean jars. Got my weight, got a funnel, cutting pad. This is butcher's paper. This is what you're actually going to need to do your bacon with. Be sure and get the all natural. I don't use the bleached white stuff or anything, so try and keep everything all natural. Of course, we have our canner here. For you guys new to canning, when you go down and buy your canner, it says 16 quart on it. That's if you're actually pressure cooking. This canner here will actually only hold 7 quart jars. But I got a few inches of water in there. Down about here, it's already heating just to preheat everything. But we're going to do the hamburger meat first. And what you need to realize about canning, guys, is it's kind of like cooking. Everybody has their own way of doing it. There are certain things, rules that you got to follow. But as far as preparation, there are many different ways that you can do it. This is just the way that I like to do it. I like to pre-cook my hamburger meat. I do like to add my seasoning in there. Because I'm canning this stuff up for later use, and when I open it up and want to use it, I want to make sure that it tastes good and has some flavor. At that point in time, I may or may not have things that I can add to it to make it taste better. So any seasoning that you want to add to make it taste the way that you like it, go ahead and add it. Of course, you can just do regular for spaghetti, or you may be making something else that you don't want flavored that flavor, so you can just do regular meat as well. Put a little salt in it maybe, but totally up to you. I like the flavor. I pretty much put all seasoning in everything that I cook. So let me get this started. Let me get this browned up and going. Jars are clean. Everything's ready. Let me just get started here. Okay, now we're just browning this meat. You don't necessarily have to cook it all the way through because it is going to cook in the pressure canner. But like I said, I do like to brown my hamburger meat and add my spices in. About 6.5 pounds of meat here. I'm hoping to maybe get a pound per jar. We're going to use some Montreal. I don't know if you can see that or not, but Montreal steak seasoning. Go ahead and season it up how you like. We got salt. We got some onion powder. And we got some garlic. Of course, black pepper. Montreal and that one back there. Just cook hamburger meat the way you normally cook it. A lot here, so it's going to take a minute. But you can put a couple of inches of water in your cooker. Get it warm. I'm going to go ahead and put my jars in the oven. Probably crank it up around 175, 180. Get the jars warm. Everything is going to be warm when this all comes together. You don't want to use cold jars. You don't want to put hot stuff in the glass cold jars. So I'm going to get my jars warming up, get this meat browned up, and we'll be back. Okay, for y'all wondering, that is an 88-12 mix lean of hamburger meat. You do not want to cook all of the juices out of it. You just want to brown it. Okay, so do not cook all the fat and water out of your hamburger meat. You don't want it so dry. Remember, it is going to cook in the jar. You just need to brown it. Now, on the bacon here, this is just store-bought bacon. Comes in a package. I'm going to cut this in half. And the secret is to wrap it in this butcher paper. I've cut this butcher paper to fit inside of a mason jar so that the bacon stands up. The bacon will not be pre-cooked. It will be put in the jar raw, and the pressure canning will actually cook the bacon, and then you will actually recook it. If you notice in my other video on bacon, you recook the bacon whenever you get ready to use it. So let me set this up, get this ready, cut it up, and we'll wrap some up. Okay. Of course, be as sanitary as you possibly can with everything. You don't want this bacon to fit inside the mason jar, so I'm just going to about cut it in half there. And I'm hoping I get all this into one jar. Benchmade. Okay, what you want to do is take a slice of bacon, lay it on your paper, and fold it. Slice of bacon, fold it. Slice of bacon, fold it. Now see, this is some pretty fatty bacon. There's not a lot of meat in there. You could also take a full sheet and fold it in half. It just seems to take up more room. Fit one more in there. And that will stand up inside of your mason jar. A sheet here. This bacon goes in raw. It will cook inside the pressure canner, but again, you're going to need to recook it for consistency purposes. Oh, it might be a little tall. The butcher's paper basically just keeps the bacon standing up and not sinking all to the bottom of the jar and frying crispy, which is, I believe, what happens if you do not use the paper. I haven't tried it. All of these recipes have been handed down over generations, so again, canning is like cooking. Everybody has their own way. Some say don't do this, don't do that. It's trial and error as far as I'm concerned. I think I could do one more in there. So let me wash this up, guys. Rags. Keep lots of rags around. You're going to need them on your jars. Okay guys, everything is about ready. My jars are hot. The water in my cooker is warm. All the meat is brown. I got the bacon wrapped up. Lids. Got my weight. So this is where things start getting a little bit dicey. The key is keep the lip on the jar clean while you're putting the meat in the jar. Have a clean rag, wipe each top of each jar. The jars are hot. They may cool off some by the time you get them in the canner. It's okay. The key here is not to put cold things or hot things in cold jars. Okay, so let me get one out here. I want to do the bacon first. Of course, these jars were sterilized before. Like I said, they're hot. What you want to do is just stack this bacon in the jar. Make sure any paper is folded down. That's not to obstruct the top when you close it. You see how that bacon is just stacked in there? I want to make sure all this paper is down whenever I put the lid on it. The fat, when the bacon cooks, will go to the bottom and settle out. But again, you're going to recook this whenever you pull it out of this jar. Lid, no need to preheat. Almost forgot. Clean rag, wipe the top of your jar, make sure. Now the lid. Hand tight, no need to squeeze it down on there hard. Again, moisture is going to evaporate out of this jar to give you the vacuum seal. So there's no need to screw that lid down on there. Take your jar and just set it in your canner. Now we're going to start on the hamburger meat. Couldn't find my big funnel, so the little funnel's going to have to work. Don't pack your jars full. Just let the meat fall in there freely. Be sure and get some of the juice, the broth that is cooked in the bottom of your pan. We want some of that in each jar. Small edit there. Kids, as I was saying, be sure and get some of the broth from each into each jar. As you can see here, there's still a little bit of pink on some of that meat, which is totally fine. The jar is not packed hard. I never pack past the curb of the jar. They say give yourself an inch to the top because things are going to bubble in there. The key is you don't want anything on that lid. That's why cans break down over time. The material inside the can eats through the sprayed on layer of the can, and then the can goes bad. The top. As this meat cooks, you're going to get a little bit of oil in the bottom down here, fat. That's good to keep, but I also like to add this jar about halfway full of water. And again, use hot water. This only makes a broth. It's not going to hurt the meat at all. Gives it a medium to cook in. And when you open it later, that will just be a meaty broth. When you cook this or warm this up later, you can just cook that water off and you'll be back down to hamburger meat. So I'm going to get some hot water, fill this jar up. That's basically what you need to do to all of these jars. Be sure and wipe your top, put the lid on, and set it into your canner. Now your canner only has a couple of inches of water. But as you stack these jars around in here, that water level is going to rise. As you can see, my water is hot. It's steaming a little bit. But as I put the rest of these jars in here, that water is going to rise. You want the water to be about 3/4 on the jar when all of your jars are in there and you want to start canning. So you can adjust this water later till you learn about where the water needs to be for your 7 jars to be inside your cooker. And all cookers are a little different, so this takes time to learn yours. So I'll be back when I get all these jars full. Okay, as you can see, that 6 pounds about filled 5 jars loosely. Okay, now we're going to add some water into these jars. This is hot water, not boiling, but it is hot. About half, 3/4. Cover your material. See if the camera can pick up on that, but we got a water level about right here. About right here. We're covering about 3/4 of what is actually in the jar. Okay, I'm gonna wipe all these tops down, put lids on them, set them in the canner. That lid being clean is the most important. And tight. Set it in the canner. And tight. Remember, all of this is hot going into your canner. Less time and energy that you're gonna have to have heating that canner to actually steam. Now I have one more jar left over that I'm gonna do in some bacon. So let me get back with you after I get that bacon wrapped up. Okay everybody, this is the other pack of bacon that I did here. It made 3 small wraps. That will go in my last jar. As always with canning, room, filling the jar, having enough stuff, you're always probably going to have a little extra or a little too short. So just get used to it, can up what you got. It's all good stuff if you can get it in that jar. I got the last jar here. Here's my wrapped bacon. Again, we're going to stand that up in there. Those are kind of tall. It'll make them work. We're leaving this room in the top of the jar for expansion normally when you're cooking, but this bacon is not going to expand. It's actually going to shrink, so you can get a little closer to that lid, but again, you don't want anything touching that lid. Okay, as you can see now, the water level is about 3/4 on that jar. The ones with your bacon are a little floaty and they're probably going to rattle around in there, but they should be okay. If you had another ring, you could set another ring on the top of this, but they're just a little light because they don't have as much fat, but you do not add water to them. As you can see, it's steaming here. I'm going to go ahead and put the top on. We're going to get this process started. Make sure your canner lid is locked and in place. I've had the fire keeping the water just below boiling, so we're going to go ahead and turn up the heat. You don't want to blast it out, but you want to start raising the temperature in this canner. The first thing that's going to pop up is going to be the safety valve right here. Okay, when this pops up, it lets you know there is pressure inside of the canner. You're going to start to get steam out of your weight vent hole right here, and you need that steaming for at least 10 minutes. That is a critical part. That makes sure that everything is heated through on the inside of the canner before you start the process. So again, your air check valve here, pressure valve, is going to lift, which I will show you, and then you're going to start getting steam out of your vent hole. There will be no pressure on the gauge at this point. Okay, so after this heats up, I'm going to come back and show you what's happening. And again, don't blast out the heat. You're just raising the temperature gradually at this process. Alright everybody, I just want to remind you, from the time you set this pot on the stove and fasten down that lid, it is very important not to leave this pot unattended. We all know what this can become. Steam pressurized is very, very dangerous. So do not leave this pot unattended. It is going to give you signs as to when it's ready and what it's ready for, and that's what you need to be paying attention for. The clock is fixing to start on this thing. Here in a minute, this pressure valve is going to pop up. You can already start to see a little steam coming out of my vent hole over here. So as soon as this pot gets pressure and this little valve right here raises, in about 10 minutes after that is when we're going to start our cook time, and that is when it becomes very important. So after this valve raises here, I'll come back and show you what's going on. But again, don't leave this pot unattended, guys. Alright? It's very dangerous. Okay guys, as you can see, the pressure valve has raised and we are getting steam out of our vent port over here. So I can turn the fire down a little bit because we're still raising temperature. Not much. You want to keep the pressure on this canner. Now you got steam coming out of your vent here. We're going to start the clock at 10 minutes. You want steam coming out of here for 10 minutes before you put the weight on the actual cooker. You will still see no pressure on your gauge. Okay, 10 minutes. Vent must stay up. This pressure indicator is telling you that there is pressure inside of that cannet right now. So as long as that thing is up, you cannot remove this lid. Again, do not leave this unattended, guys. Very important. You can hear it bubbling around in there, boiling. It is basically pressure cooking right now. Okay? Okay guys, going on 7-8 minutes here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but we've got a pretty good column of steam here coming off of our pot. Again, no pressure on our gauge because we don't have our weight on yet. We're still through that heating process, first 10 minutes. But this process is pretty much good for all red meat. It really doesn't change much for fish or poultry either. But as far as red meat is concerned, like I said, I like to cook a lot of my stuff before I can it. I'm going to probably do some steaks out on the grill tonight. Just throw them on the grill, get that good smoky charred flavor, ultra rare. Come in, cube them up, and then put them in the canner, so that way I've got that barbecued taste whenever I open that jar. So we're coming up on 10 minutes. I'm going to put that weight over there on our vent, and our pressure should start raising inside of our canner. A lot of people can leftovers. You can do that as well if you cook extra. The thing is, again, it's the amount of food that you're cooking. If you're cooking leftovers and you want to can them, you really need to cook a large dinner to have a lot of leftover jars to fill that canner. It takes a lot of gas and energy to do this, to run this canner for the time allotted. So you want to have the maximum amount of jars in there as possible. But we're coming up on the timer here. As soon as it gets ready, I'm going to drop that weight on there. Thanks, guys. Okay, we are at the 10-minute mark, so I'm going to drop my weight on there. Now, this is where things start getting real critical, and you need to pay attention. From the time you drop that weight on there, you should start to see a rise in pressure on your gauge. Now, I am basically at sea level here, and we want to can at about 11 psi. That's the general rule of thumb. The higher in elevation that you go, the higher PSI that you're going to run. And I'm going to insert a picture here from the canning guide of elevation and pressure. But you should start to see a rise in your gauge. You do not want a real fast rise that tells you that your heat is too high. You don't want to go way past your 11 psi or your 12 or 13, whatever it may be at your elevation. You want to get to that psi and stay at that psi for 90 minutes. So we're going to be cooking at 11 psi for 90 minutes, and again, I'm at sea level. So 11 to 12 is just about right for me. You do not want to drop below that level. If at any point in your 90 minutes of cooking it goes below your 11 psi, you must start the whole process over. Let the canner cool off, let everything cool off, let your safety valves drop, open it up, clean your jar lids, start the process over. Okay? So as we start to see a little rise of temperature here and get up there, I will be back. Okay, we've had a slow and steady climb. We're up to about 10 psi now. Again, I am at sea level, so at the 11 psi, I still might not get a of my weight over here. But we are going to start controlling our fire, turning down a little bit. Again, we just want to approach that 11 psi and not way overshoot it. So, still rising, we're almost there. Turn your fire down a little bit. Control of the fire is what controls your PSI. Okay? We're at 11 psi. Our clock is going to start now. 90 minutes. Do not let it fall below your regulated psi within that 90 minutes, or you must start over. All the way. New lids, everything. So do not let it drop below that psi, guys. 90 minutes. Clock starts now. Okay, we're in a little bit. As you can see, I don't know if it's going to focus, but we're running about 11.5 psi, just about right. And for that big pot, I don't know if you can see down there, there is really not a lot of gas going to it. Once you get it hot, it stays hot. It doesn't take a lot of fire, so don't think you got to have a big, huge stove to pressure can. Just get everything hot, get it all in there, give it time, don't rush it. Don't try and build too big a fire underneath it to get it hot. Time is the critical thing here. So you want to hold that thing at that PSI the entire 90 minutes. So watch your fire. Again, don't walk off and leave it, guys. Things change. You might have a bottle break in there. A jar bust, everything gets in there. It's going to cook totally different. So watch it. Okay, everybody, the 90-minute timer has just gone off. As you can see, we're almost 12 pounds there, in between 11 and 12 pounds. Been able to maintain it this whole time. So all you want to do at first is just turn the fire off. Don't take anything off of your canner. Let it sit there, let it cool. The pressure relief valve has dropped, which means there is no more pressure in the canner. You could actually take the lid off. I personally like to wait about 20 or 30 minutes and just let it cool down some more before I remove the lid. Whenever you do remove the lid, be sure and pull the lid towards you, because there will be steam coming out of it and you don't want to get burned. So pull the lid towards you whenever you take it off. And again, I wait about 30 minutes after this valve has dropped, which shows there is no pressure in the canner. So just let it sit there about 30 minutes and cool off. I'll be back when I pop the top. Alright, everybody, it's been about 20-30 minutes or so. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the top off of this canner and pull these jars out. Like I said, they do kind of make a lot of stuff for this canning. This is just a jar gripper for grabbing hot jars out of that canner. Bacon. Those are still pretty warm, so I'm going to let them sit in there another 10 to 15 minutes before I pull them out. But to give you an idea, here's the bacon right there. You can already hear the lid popping on them. So we'll come back when these cool off just a little bit. They're still bubbling, boiling in there. Again, guys, you do not want to pull these jars out too fast. I'm going to zoom in there. You can see that jar still boiling. That's how the food gets cooked inside this canner whenever you put it in there raw. So you don't want to pull these jars out when they're really, really hot. They could get thermal shock and break on you. So just take your time. You've made it this far. Let them cool off a little bit. They will go ahead and seal and pop inside this canner sitting here cooling off. Most of them have already popped. There's a couple of them there that haven't yet, but just give them a little time to cool off, and you can pull them out. All right, everybody. I think it's cooled off enough. I'm going to go ahead and take these jars out. Okay, that's pretty much it. Everything's done. These jars have been out over an hour, and you can see they are still bubbling. That's how hot they get. Last thing, just be sure and label what's in your jar and the date that you actually canned it. I put the month and the year. That seems to work okay for me. You may actually know what's inside the jar, but somebody else may not. Your kids or other family, somebody else. I'm canning this stuff for long term. It's not like I'm probably going to be using it next year. So if you guys are wondering how long this stuff lasts, watch my other video where I make a 9-year-old bacon breakfast sandwich. So again, the best way to do meats, no refrigeration required, cool, dark place, store up all you can. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope it helps.